Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.
Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Jean Till, and on today's show, we're visiting with Dale Ahlquist. He is the president of the American Chesterton Society, and we're going to discuss just this light topic of socialism versus capitalism, and really, it's our souls in
Let
jeopardy.
not our listeners be put off. I think it's going to be a wide-ranging, lively, and witty show here. Yeah. So some nice banter and repartee probably as well. So
I enjoy his Chesterton minutes on that air periodically.
Well, then you'll need to engage him and maybe pose a couple of questions there as well. But here we are concluding the first full week of Lent, and hopefully people have, in earnest, begun their spiritual disciplines with some hope and no small measure of courage as well, because we know when we become earnest in pursuing Jesus and the spiritual life, there are forces unfriendly to us, both in the natural and in the supernatural realm. So not trying to scare anybody, but we do not do this lightly, and we do not do it alone. We go this way together. And how inspiring it was last weekend, both at St. Peter Church in Council Bluffs on Saturday morning, and then at St. Francis of Assisi in West Des Moines on Sunday to celebrate the rite of election. And then also those who are candidates for full initiation, but the rite of election of those who have not been baptized and have yet somehow, through the people in their lives and through their own openness of heart, God has beckoned them, and they are responding. And, even my family, noting the diocesan Facebook page and some of the shots that Anne-Marie Cox and team posted there, like, what, Uncle Bill, why are you so, I've never seen you so happy, and I, all I can respond is, because it's so beautiful to be around people who want Jesus and want to experience him in the church, and it just makes my heart burst, and there were so many. I don't have a number for you, Jean, or for our listeners.
I like numbers.
But if past history proves, I would guess present were a total at least 350 or so. Wow. So if you take about the parishes, and a great number of children, that was a beautiful thing, and their childlikeness. And kind of thinking about childhood a little bit, not to hopefully go off on too great a departure here, but I was at a mini conference I alerted, I think, in a previous show on science and faith and the disaffiliated, whereas rite of election is celebrating those who are affiliating, becoming children of God in communion with others as brothers and sisters. But Professor Karin Oberg is a professor of astronomy. She's actually an astrochemist at Harvard University. Not too shabby an institution, They got a little bit of an endowment.
But can she crochet?
Endowment there. We didn't get into that, but she gave us a beautiful presentation. And one of the things, she kind of talking about the evolution of stars and the cosmos, but then she talked about the human species and our place in all this and the relationship. But among the things, and some of these topics are not brand new for me, but a new awareness for me was how in Homo sapiens, not only are we less developed at birth and hence need nurturance from our parents, but there's a whole period of childhood. We think, and if I saw her graph as I was reading it, as she moved quickly through her slides, 6 to 10 years old maybe was what she was defining, probably pre-puberty and everything else. But that this is unique among animal species to us as humans, time where creativity, imagination, play, and intellectual, spiritual development it's a grand opportunity that God affords us. And so that's why, of course, we want to reverence our children, protect them, but not overprotect them, and allow them to venture into places where, maybe, as Jonathan Haidt says, they'll make mistakes, get a few bumps and bruises, hopefully nothing tragic, we don't want to, but that whole sense of childlike play. And I think, for her, her own spiritual journey, I think is a prelude to our guest today, Professor Ahlquist, that she found, as she was at Caltech, she was born Swedish Lutheran, baptized as a child, but Caltech, and then her doctoral studies, reading things like C.S. Lewis, The Screwtape Letters, The Abolition of Man, but then also The Lord of the Rings, and then G.K. Chesterton's orthodoxy really kind of opened her up to the faith. And so as a doctoral student, she became Catholic. So the compatibility of faith and science and reason and all that, but her own childlikeness and receptivity at maybe a later age and what we're about. We're looking at time here.
We're looking at time.
Oh, my gosh, how quickly it goes. So looking forward to our guests then.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Dale Ahlquist, the president of the American Chesterton Society. We're going to discuss socialism versus capitalism. And is it a battle to save our souls? You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. And on today's show, we have guest Dale Ahlquist. He's the president of the American Chesterton Society, to discuss socialism versus capitalism.
And looking forward to that engagement. But first, just a shout out next week, the grand event for Des Moines Diocese Catholic Charities, Shamrocks and Shenanigans, as we move into March, and a new venue at Glen Oaks Country Club.
Oh, that'll be fun.
So we thought this would be a nice opportunity for some of our folks to join us, and already the numbers are great. But there might be some people who might be captivated, both to support the mission of Catholic Charities and have a little Irish fun.
Well, go online, folks, to CatholicCharitiesDM.org. That'll get you to the main website. And then go get involved and Shamrocks. You're being for fun.
Thank you. All right. Well, Dale Ahlquist, thank you for your patience. President of the American Chesterton Society, familiar to viewers of your show, your former show on EWTN. President for life, is this an elected office or is this?
No, it's something I backed into and I have not been able to back out of yet. But I'm sure when the time comes, I'll be happy to do other things. But the Lord has blessed my efforts till now, so I'm really happy to be where I am.
Well, thank you. And as I was alluding, the impact of Chesterton, not only on young people, but continuing to attract some through the intellectual conversions that they have. Professor Karin Oberg of Harvard University, astrochemist, others as well, finding that the exposure of this. But he's a wide-ranging, gigantic intellect and persona. I think someone that we can appreciate. But we're kind of focusing on one facet of his reflections and writings, as all things Pope Leo XIV. But why in choosing that name, looking back to Pope Leo XIII, and the great impact he has had and continues to have on the Catholic Church, kind of looked to as the founder of the tradition of Catholic social teaching. His encyclical Rerum Novarum for myself, and then it's kind of the popes, successive popes, have felt fit to mark that at 40, 80, 100-year anniversaries and even beyond. And most recently, I think, with Pope Francis's Fratelli Tutti. But we'd like to kind of just talk because, as we enter, we're not trying to overtly be political here, but as they say, it's all about the economy and how this impacts, goods and services and the resources of a country, of a polis, affecting families where they live. So welcome to you. And where did Chesterton really begin to engage Leo or some of these economic things as things were evolving, the evolving terrain with the labor, capitalism, the rights of workers, and all those things that were the new thing that Leo indicated?
Yes, well, thank you, Bishop. I'm really, really grateful for having the opportunity to talk about this, because this was very important to G.K. Chesterton. It's one of the things that's overlooked by many people who really love Chesterton for many things, because he obviously, he was a great defender of the Catholic faith, but he also wrote some fun detective stories and a lot of other things. But this was really important to him, and he embraced it early on in his writing career, and largely thanks to Hilaire Belloc, his great colleague and friend, fellow writer, who really introduced him to Rerum Novarum. So 1891 is Rerum Novarum. Chesterton learns about it in about probably 1902, 1903, right around that time period, and took off with it immediately. It just resonated with him. Growing up in late Victorian England, he really saw firsthand the the devastation, really, of industrial capitalism and what it did to the urban areas, and saw the horror of child labor and workers with no rights whatsoever, and really truly oppressed. And like so many young men, intellectuals at that time, naturally they were drawn towards socialism, the reaction against this industrial capitalism. And what the Pope does in Rerum Novarum, Pope Leo XIII, is he completely excoriates industrial capitalism as reducing workers to a condition little better than slaves. Mm-hmm. And but then he says the wrong reaction to this, the absolute wrong reaction to this, is socialism. And so right there, the Pope basically slugs to the right and to the left. And he says the solution is for more workers to become owners, to have a stake in the wealth that they create. And so what he's suggesting is not socialism at all, but rather the expansion of ownership. And that if more workers were owners, property / capital would be better distributed. And he said, justice is distributive. Everyone's entitled to justice. And so, because
if I may break in here, Dale, just for our listeners, what would be your kind of operative definition of socialism? We think about, society, but the government, the state, owning the means of delivery of services and capital, or how would you define it?
Well, these words are bantered about, and for those that are not studied in this, they're like, oh, well, that sounds good. Oh, well, capitalism bad, those money-grubbing capitalists. It's like, if you don't really know,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. People they bandy these words about pretty loosely, and, using one word to demonize the other. But, capitalism is, based on the ideas of Adam Smith, and the use of money to make money is really what it's about. So it ends up with being a system where there's really just a few owners and everybody else is working for them as wage earners. And socialism basically takes away those few owners, and the state becomes the manager of everything. Everybody's working for the state. So people are still wage earners, but they're working for the state instead of for a few private enterprises. And so in any case, widespread ownership is not the case either under socialism or capitalism. That's the argument that the Pope is making, and what Chesterton and Belloc were
because
making.
in a kind of unbridled capitalism, there's no concern for the integrity, the virtue of those who are the owners, who respect the dignity of human persons. As you say, they become reduced to the condition of nature, kind of a Hobbesian slave world, and the competition that's there. So really more of an oligarchy than any kind of virtuous aristocracy that would have the best interests of those under them at heart. Right. That's
absolutely correct. And so Belloc and Chesterton came up with it was Belloc who came up with the name distributism, which they never liked the word. They always said it was an awkward word, and they were always going to come up with a better term because it was always so hard to explain what it meant, because it's always confused with redistribution, with someone taking someone's property and giving it to someone else, which is what the government does through taxes, right? They tax people, and then they redistribute that wealth in the form of services to the rest of the public, right? So redistribution is different from distributism. The idea, and Chesterton says, distributism is not something done to people; it's done by people. It's people starting to really take control of their own lives, and choosing to spend their money differently, choosing to work differently, trying to become small business owners or small stake owners rather than working for someone else. So the best way to describe it is, on the spectrum, you've got capitalism, which is about individual rights, socialism, which is about community rights, Distributism is about family rights. It recognizes that the family is the basic unit of society, and everything should be supporting the family's interest. If you emphasize individual rights, that will undermine the family. If you emphasize communal rights, as in socialism, that will undermine the family.
And so people become agents of their own destiny. They participate, bringing their intellects and will to bear on the choices they make, that the kind of authority that parents bear in a household, how best raise their children, and that the family bears a kind of integrity and power, if you will, that's prior to the state. I'm giving a little Aristotle there as well, right? That the economy of the household is prior to the polis or the state in that way, but that both are interdependent. We can't really have one without the other at the same time. Yeah. So it's not tilting at the state saying we need to do away with that, but at the same time, that might be present. The sense, though, that distributivism, what you're kind of dispelling for maybe guys like me is, the kind of nanny state where they're doling out, whether by merit or need that might be present, and kind of eliminating the bonds of justice where we all have responsibilities to take part in this, to contribute as well as to be the recipients of what is distributed by not only the state, by other segments of society.
Yes, and this is where, the two tenets of Catholic social teaching are subsidiarity and solidarity. And this is why we basically have tried to, we're doing away with the word distributism and calling it localism, which is a much clearer understanding of what's going on, because that's what subsidiarity is. It means that the things that most directly affect you should be in control of. They should not be determined by a far away centralized system. So that applies to both commerce and government. So, as Chesterton says, you have to keep your politician close enough to kick him.
Haven't heard that one.
Right. So the idea is that local control.
I think he might just gone on the watch list there. I don't
know. I hope your whole diocese hasn't suffered from my appearance on your show, but the idea is that local control. You should have a say in the things that directly affect you, and that means people being involved in decisions directly. That's what democracy is. But the same thing holds true with commerce. Keep your dollars local. Don't give money to a distant corporation, a centralized corporation, because that doesn't really serve your neighbor. You love your neighbor by supporting your neighbor's business. And
so
that's where the solidarity comes.
Shop local, right?
Yeah.
Go to Valley Junction. Yeah, all right.
I could name names.
I think we're approaching a topic, and I really would sincerely look for you to unpack for me. We think about the right to private property. I think it's safe to say the church doesn't think that's absolute, but within certain boundaries. Maybe in light of what's called the universal destination of goods. And that's always been an intriguing and sometimes perplexing phrase for me. Dale, can you help me get my mind around the universal destination of goods?
Yeah, well, again, our first obligation is to our family. And if the family is strong, the whole society is strong. And so we have a duty to, provide for our family, and we should have the freedom to do so. And so the families of, Chesterton argues the human home is the place of freedom. And it's the most important place, in the social life and in the daily life of a human is inside the walls of the home. He says the home is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. And the world thinks that it's outside those walls where the important things happen. And Chesterton argues it's just the opposite. And so starting with that premise, our labor should be by serving first the local needs everything else, like a pebble or a ripple effect, comes from that. By taking care of our home, then we start taking care of our neighbor. We protect our neighbor's interests too, and we are then protecting the community as well. And so the state really has minimal duties. They protect a nation. They provide for infrastructure, for instance. That's how subsidiarity works. The government builds a road in front of me, but I get to use the road, and even though the government is the one providing the road. So,
and just a practical example springs to mind, like OSHA regulations and things protecting the workplace and condition of workers, or increased fines in construction zones that local villages, towns can do that, versus maybe local villages who look to capitalize on the freeway by installing a speed camera and just kind of making it like their personal ATM. That's an overextension of what they're about. Yeah,
and of course, even OSHA, you have to keep a close eye on how those rules are written, because sometimes they're written by large corporations, which favor the large corporations and put the smaller providers out of business because they can't meet the regulations. So there again, it should be more local than it should be centralized and remote.
Yeah, and we won't even mention the European Union. Whoops, I just did. So, but
all
right. So
we have to take a break.
There's an inherent tension here, and I'm feeling a tension with Jean that we have to take a break.
But stay tuned. We will be right back with Dale Ahlquist, the president of the American Chesterton Society. If you would like to learn more about that organization, go online to Chesterton.org. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network. Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
You think about the subjugation and the conditions, that gave rise to the abuse of workers. So not only the protection of workers, their right to associate. We see the advent of unions, in part fueled by Rerum Novarum and the endorsement that was given there, plus the right to religious freedom. So a new concept of association, solidarity, becomes an important theme in Catholic social teaching. Dale, how would you situate this in light of all that we've been talking about?
Well, it does show the brilliance of that wonderful encyclical from Pope Leo XIII, because he did cover all those things, and they've had certainly ramifications throughout the century that followed him, the 20th century, and now in our century. And it is exciting to me that Pope Leo XIV, took his name from this pope specifically for Rerum Novarum, and the rights of workers. That's a very important thing in a huge. A system of huge corporations. Workers often are taken advantage of, and the church has supported unions, but it's trying to direct what those concerns should be. Again, the Pope was talking about increased ownership, whereas too many unions just want increased benefits, and they really maintain a slave mentality, the wage slave mentality. And
which is really paradoxical, right, or ironic?
Yeah, it is paradoxical. Yeah, so they're not making the gains that Chesterton would have envisioned with more smaller, independent companies rather than a giant corporation just swallowing up more people and more companies. So that's that would be one thing that distributism/localism would be moving towards, is try to get more local companies rather than just having another branch of some giant corporation set down in a community.
Yeah. And with no aspersions cast,
I'm not going to mention any rivers in South America right now. Okay, that's not something I'm going to say. All right.
But our present Pope, Leo XIV, formed in that South American ethos, and in Peru, and the situation of workers and socialism has a very different cast in some of those countries. So that kind of cultural imprint that might be present versus, let's say, Northern Europe and where we're about. the way in which then religious freedom is also vital to this, I think kind of dovetailing with what you said about the family and the prerogative of people to worship God as they've come to know Him, and the tradition and association that might be present in all of this. Iowa is I'm going to go back to that. I think I'm bouncing around here a little bit, but Iowa is a right-to-work state, so we kind of live with that tension where unions are entitled to be formed, but at the same point that can't deny individuals their opportunities for access to full employment. And so, we kind of live and straddle that distinction. We know some of the healthcare systems, even in our state, workers attempting to unionize. They were looking for the church to advocate on their behalf, and kind of took a little bit of a step back and just said, here's what we believe, here's the principles that we put forward. Now it's for you to take the initiative to assemble in this way. As our time begins to wind down, we'd be remiss if we didn't just say how the Chesterton Academies manifest this philosophy of life and being together in community. And we've got about 50 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, well, people always ask, Dale, what are you doing about to make this happen? Well, I've had a great role in helping these Chesterton Academies get started all over the country. We'll soon have 100 of them, but these are all locally formed schools where parents are actually controlling the destiny of their children's education, and it's localism personified.
Oh, beautiful. And obviously the Twin Cities is a place where that's flourished. Are they inherently religious in character, or is it...
Yeah, they're all Catholic. They're all...
Okay.
That's pretty religious.
That's pretty religious.
Yeah, but other members are free to join. And
Oh, yeah. The only danger of a non-Catholic student attending a Chesterton Academy is that they often become Catholic.
Oh, yeah. Warming my heart. So thank you for your time with us. Obviously some broad-ranging topics that we had to nimbly kind of move through, but look forward to it. And may your spiritual fatherhood of the Chesterton Academies continue to flourish.
It's a blessing to be with you, Bishop. Thank you so much for having me.
This has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thanks to our guest and to all of you, our listeners, whether in Iowa or Wisconsin or Missouri or wherever you may be, to the Iowa Catholic Radio Network and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.